Good afternoon, and welcome to those of you out there. This is the impact of the MNUFP live briefing. This session is one of several in a series coordinated by NASPA, by the NASPA 100th anniversary educational subcommittee. My name is Dr. Sue Borrego, pronouns she, her, hers, and I serve as the Chancellor of the University of Michigan at Flint. I've served as a faculty member for the Dungy Summer Leadership Institute, the NUFP board chair during the MNUFP transition, and I wrote the book Where I'm From, featuring NUFP participants. As a first-gen student, I wasn't great at networking. I thought my good work should speak for itself, and one of the things I learned when I was a faculty in MNUFP was a lot more about networking and how critical a program like this is in helping you connect and create relationships with people in the field. I have the pleasure of serving as the moderator for today's conversation. I want to say just a little bit about MNUFP. It's really transitioned over the course of years. So some of you there maybe have come through the program when it was the Minority Undergraduate Fellowship Program, and then it changed to the NASPA Undergraduate Fellowship Program and opened up and included students who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, and first-generation students. The 30th anniversary of NUFP it coincides with NASPA's 100th, and this live briefing intends to engage MUF and NUF alumni who are now in senior leadership positions on their experience as fellows and how that has helped shape their careers. The NUF-MUF alums will share lessons they learned through the program and how those lessons inform their practice today. So I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their role now, and then we'll begin with some questions. Dr. Carvajal, please start.
Absolutely. Hello, I'm Dr. Richard Carvajal. I'm the current president of Valdosta State University in Southern Georgia. I guess I'm one of the old timers in that I got in the program when it was still in its pilot phase, still trying to get off the ground and still being studied in the very early 90s, and it then led to me launching a career in student affairs before ultimately moving to the presidency. And I know we're going to talk about this program and the mentors we had and that relationship. I was so pleased got featured in one of the NASPA books that came out this last year, Transformational Encounters. And so I think you're going to hear a lot of those stories and how these mentors have changed our lives.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tiffany Davis, and I am a clinical assistant professor of higher education at the University of Houston, where I also serve as the program director for our master's programs in higher education administration. I am also an alum of the Minority Undergraduate Fellows Program back in the early 2000s, and from the University of Tennessee. I am also so honored to be serving as the national chair for the NUFP program, where I oversee an advisory board of dedicated volunteers who are helping to transform the way that NUFP fellows and NUFP mentors are experiencing the program. And so I work with Jasmine Scott, who is our amazing NASPA liaison, to coordinate the program for our fellows.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Casey Mmeje, and I have the privilege of serving as the Vice President for Student Affairs at SMU in Dallas. And I'm a proud MUF alum from 2001. I did my undergraduate work at the University of California at Santa Barbara.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Michele Scott Taylor. I am currently the Chief Program Officer of a nonprofit, the first college access organization in the nation, College Now Greater Cleveland, where we help students navigate the college and career-going process. Proud alum of the MUF program from the mid-90s and served in a variety of higher education roles at various universities across the East Coast, and happy to be here on this call today.
Thank you. Will you take some time, and this is a question for each of you, to talk a bit about your involvement in the program as an undergrad, or if you were a faculty member, however you were involved, and how it influenced your career journey in higher ed.
Well, I guess I could start, since I'll take old timer privilege here and start, because back then the program didn't look a lot like it does today. In fact, the book that came out originally that was instructions for mentors, I think it was like 4 pages thick. And it really didn't have much in it. It said, have a mentor, meet with them. I think it was maybe 4 times a year was what it set up. And that was pretty much it. This was before the days of, most fellows at that point weren't going to the summer internship. They weren't going and doing an offsite summer leadership program like we obviously do now. So we were just trying to figure out what it was. And I had formed a relationship with my vice president of student services on campus, and he had been a long-time member and leader in NASPA, and so he heard about this, thought it was a good thing, and he pulled me into his office and said, hey, I think you might be good at this. What do you think? And he pitched it to me, and I guess the rest is history. We got in it, and he's still my mentor. He's still what I call my professional father. We still talk all the time. And he's been a part of my life literally ever since that program. But when we got in it, we realized quickly that 4 meetings wasn't going to do it. Now, we were already meeting more than that, but he set up a plan for me to spend time in pretty much every area of student affairs across the campus. I remember even, and he loves to tell the story of the time he put me on a ride-along with our university police department and the things that we had that we dealt with that night. So it was a great experience, and there's no question it helped launch my career, because when I went off to grad school, I wasn't the typical person that had just come out of undergrad trying to kind of see what this was all about. I had a real strong orientation, and I'll forever be grateful for that. And I hope that the work we did ultimately when I was in my master's program, my master's thesis was, I think, the first qualitative look of this study. And essentially what we described was, hey, we need to have something that causes students to do all sorts of things and is very intensive. I could not be happier that that's where the program has gone. So for folks who are thinking of getting in it now, they're moving into something that I believe that can be life-changing.
Great. Tiffany,
This is Michele. So I came in about the mid-90s, and so I might have been maybe one of the first couple of classes that did the Institute, and it was life-changing for me. I think it was my first airplane ride, I'm pretty sure, going to the University of Maryland, so that in itself was exciting. And I think that working with the vice president of student affairs at the time, I really didn't know much about student affairs. I was just really involved on campus, like many of us probably were. And I think that they saw that this could be something I was interested in given my extracurricular activities. So to be able then to work in offices in my internship that I wouldn't have necessarily thought that I could work in was very eye-opening. For example, the International Affairs Office, I ended up studying abroad, just by spending time in that office and learning about what they do. So not only did this program kind of introduce me to student affairs, which I then continued on in my education, but it also opened my eyes to the world of work and things you can do that, coming out of being first gen on top of a minority, had no idea this was even a career or profession that you can even pursue. So life-changing.
Great.
I'm happy to go next. So when I think about NUF and the MUF program, I always tell people I am MUF, right? Because I started off at the University of Tennessee, and it was the first, I had heard of it. I was the first MUF fellow at the University of Tennessee. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to go to my graduate program at Bowling Green State University and received a scholarship for being in the program as an undergraduate. And so that extra money allowed me to stay involved with NASPA, and so I became a NUF buddy. And then after I became a NUF buddy, and then after I graduated my graduate program, I was able to become a NUF mentor and started actually a campus-based program for the NUF program at Bowling Green State University. And I was able to get involved. I then was provided an opportunity. At that time, they had a role for the National Planning Committee, and so was able to plan NASPA Boston back in 2008. as the NUF representative. Continued and developed another campus-based program at North Carolina State University, and I also was director for the Dungy Leadership Institute for 3 years, and so was able to be involved in that. I was on faculty for one of the institutes with Dr. Carvajal at the University of Illinois, and so I kept being involved at different levels of NUF and of MUF from the volunteer leadership roles. And so when I think about how did that shape my career now as a faculty member, when I first came out of my master's program, I worked administratively before going to get my PhD. But being involved at these levels and being in spaces at NASPA with NUF students, focusing on the socialization, the professionalization, the training, all of that, I found that my interest really lied within faculty work in terms of that my full-time job. I'm like, I love NUF. I love all that I do here. And so why wouldn't my career focus from being in an administrative office to where I am daily being able to help usher new people and diverse people into our profession, supporting them through the graduate application process, graduate programs, and then being able to give back in service in more substantial ways than when I worked in residence life or in TRIO that took a lot more of my campus-based time. And so I'm able to continue to give to NUF and to students by serving in these different roles. But I think I definitely wasn't where I started when I was a MUF fellow, but my involvement has definitely cemented that the pipeline and broadening the pipeline is really important to my professional and my personal identity.
Great, thank you.
Great. And I'll say that for me, I didn't know. I'm a first generation college student. I had no idea that student affairs was a career path. I was a student that was very involved on my undergraduate campus, and my vice chancellor for student affairs encouraged me to consider applying through the NUF program. And it was through my involvement in the NUF program that I realized that student affairs was actually a career path. It was through NUF that I got involved with NASPA, that I had the opportunity to explore student affairs on another campus setting through my summer internship. The NUF program really helped me explore and research various graduate programs when I was determining or trying to discern where I would go for graduate school. And more importantly, it really expanded my professional network at a very early stage in my career. Not only did I have the opportunity to interact regularly with seasoned student affairs professionals, but I developed a peer network of like-minded students who shared a passion and interest for exploring student affairs as a career path. And those relationships have endured throughout the course of my career and have been a tremendous source of support for me. After joining the field, I've been fortunate enough to work at institutions where I've been able to manage campus-based NUF programs, whether it be at the University of Southern California, supervising NUF fellows or serving as a mentor to NUF fellows, providing summer internship opportunities. So I've, throughout my career, found a way to stay connected to the program and really feel a profound sense of obligation to give back to the next generation of undergraduate students who are also seeking to find their career path. And I think NUF is a phenomenal way and program to do that. I certainly wouldn't be where I am professionally today were it not for my involvement in the program.
Great, thank you. I want to remind people listening that if you've got questions, send those in and we'll make sure that we see those as well. What are some of the skills or lessons learned as a MUF or NUF fellow that inform your practice today? And can you give us an example? And let's start this time with, well, Casey, you just went, we'll go backwards.
All right, fair enough. I will say a skill, I guess, is just the ability to be adaptable. Similar to Michele, my involvement in NUF, when I started and I did my internship, was the first time that I'd ever left home. It was the first time that I ever moved away from home for a short period of time. I moved from South Central Los Angeles to Burlington, Vermont in pursuit of my NUF internship. Yeah, I see your face, Tiffany. It was quite the transition. But having that experience really gave me the opportunity to learn a lot about myself. And it gave me a profound sense of confidence that I had what it took to set up in a new environment and be successful. And I've used that skill several times throughout the course of my career when I've had to navigate various transitions. And so I would say one of the skills that I've learned through the NUFP program and my involvement with the program has just been adaptability, the ability to pick up and try on a new setting, put myself in an unfamiliar environment and still be successful.
Great, great, thank you. Michele, we can't hear you. You're muted.
There I go. I think one of the biggest things I learned was to know that it's okay not to know, and to know that it's okay to change your mind. So I'm pretty sure I'm like many of you, very set in what I'm going to do and what I'm going to be when I grow up and all this thing. So even in my career today, it took a lot for me to leave higher ed. And it was only because I learned that it'll be okay and that your path can vary and you could still do the work you're passionate about, even if you're not in a particular industry or sector. And so I think what the program taught me was you don't have to be a lawyer to change the world. I thought I was going to be Claire Huxtable, but that you can actually do other things, you know, and still be on the path to do what you think your purpose is to do. So it served me well understanding that, you know, there are many paths on the road to do the things that you like to do in life. And so that's what the program taught me.
Great, thanks. Thanks. Dr. Davis.
So I think back to my fellow years. My mentor was the dean of students at the time, Dr. Maxine Davis, and she allowed me to be a part of a steering committee and kind of co-leading the building of a bias protocol for the University of Tennessee. And so again, this was like in 2003, and I was an undergraduate student, and I'm like, how am I supposed to think about policy? And this is a really big issue, and this is like important. And so the lesson that always stayed with me was that we have to not just consider student voice, but also to center student voice and to trust students to be a part of the solutions and being part of their leadership development and trusting. And so I think as I go through my career, I'm often like, how can I get a student involved in this, whether that's an undergraduate student, a graduate student, for something that sometimes people feel are adult, grown folk business, right? And I'm like, no, how do we get the people who this will impact, who will be influenced by this? How can I invest and kind of give them a behind the scenes, a behind the curtains look at our work, but also how we go about the processes of our work. And so centering student voices and involvement has been a lesson that I've kept from being a part of the bias protocol creation.
Great. Dr. Carvajal.
Well, I think for me, the thing that jumped to my mind when you asked the question is just I learned so early the value of what having a mentor in your life could do. And I mean, when I think back to my career, and I think back to my life, period, and I think about the leaps that had to be made from one step to another, none of those happen, one, if I don't have amazing mentors who, for whatever reason, were willing to take me under their wing and spend some time with me and develop me, but then also in that moment when it was about time to take that leap, to tell me it was time to take the leap. Because I never really thought I was ready. It took somebody else who I trusted to tell me I was ready, and that's what got me to do it. And then in turn, as my mentors, as I got older and those relationships turned more to friendships, I saw in them how much reaching back and trying to pull somebody up in the profession had meant to them. I think a lot of those folks would say the mentors they have had are some of the most enriching relationships they've had in their life. And I feel because of that now I've been blessed to get to do that with other people. And so this is truly a program that has incredible benefit for both sides. I didn't understand that early on. To me, it was just I learned how lucky I was to be the protege. Now I get it, and now I get to see it from both sides.
Great, thank you. You know, I think for everybody listening and participating, I think Dr. Taylor said it really succinctly, like the first time she was on a plane. And Dr. MJ talked about the first time he stayed away from home. And I think one of the threads that run through our conversations are just that being in the presence of both a cohort of others and developing mentors, because many folks from traditionally underrepresented students don't have that social capital. And so for me, watching, I mean, I'm sitting here today with somebody who is in one of the leadership institutes as a student participant, who's now a vice president at SMU. And so watching him go from being an undergraduate senior to a vice president, and I know, Dr. Davis, that we've got friends in common. So I just wanted to say to the people who are listening, I think those two threads are really important. And Dr. Carvajal said it. I used to walk around NASPA for 6 or 7 years thinking I didn't know anybody. I'd go to the conference, I'd check in, I'd go to my room, I try to go to sessions, I go back to my room, and I'm an extrovert, but I all thought they knew somebody. And one of the things about the MNUFP program is you know somebody when you're connected, and you'll know them, likely some part of that cohort, for a long time. So thank you. Let's talk a little bit about what's the impact that you think MNUFP has had on NASPA and the field of student affairs. And maybe we could start that with Dr. MJ on this one. No, I started with you last time. We'll go with Dr. Taylor.
I don't know. On this call, it sounds like everyone has their doctorate. So I think what this program might have done, and probably a study could be done to confirm, is that many of us who participated in this program probably went on to get further and further education. I think the program intended to introduce more minority folks and others to the profession, probably created very strong leaders in the profession as well. And I can't say that other kinds of programs like this may have done that. We might have other student affairs professionals, but it seems like we kind of ascended to very high leadership roles, and I think that's attributable to what was mentioned earlier around that mentoring and kind of introducing and providing that social capital so that we know when it's time to go to the next level. Because I agree, you know, you never know when it's time to go because, you know, being a minority, you sometimes feel like it's not time to go because you don't know that it is time to go. And so having those mentors are important. And I think that the program reflects that in kind of the leadership and the ascension of us, you know, in our careers and in our education.
Great. Dr. Carvajal, do you want to speak to this?
Well, I guess I'll just make it real. When I first went to NASPA conferences, and this lasted for a while, I did see diversity at the very entry level, not anywhere else in our profession. Once you got particularly to the vice president level in student affairs, we saw a lot of able-bodied straight white guys. I mean, that's just what the profession looked like back then. And if you went to a NASPA conference, by and large, I'm not saying entirely, but by and large, that's what the world of higher education leadership looked like. This program was started because a group of people sat around a room and thought, you know, we could do better and our students deserve better. And those of us who have been involved in this program who now go to alumni meetings and meetings of the new group, et cetera, and we see what started out when we would have an alumni reception, we'd be in the smallest little meeting room you could get at the conference center, and there'd be 10 of us there. Now we take over a ballroom. And that's exciting because of people like KC that have moved into the vice presidency. I'm told I was the first MUF alum to move into a vice presidency, and I'm proud of that. I'm more proud of the fact that I'm nowhere near the last. And I've said that about being a president. I was told I was the first to move into that, and Tiffany knows every time I'm with enough alums, I challenge them, take my spot. Just keep coming and be in that next group. Because I do believe this program has been very impactful in helping NASPA to diversify as an association in thought and in so many different ways.
Great. Dr. Davis, given that you're the national chair right now, do you want to speak to us from that perspective?
Sure. I would agree exactly with what Dr. Taylor and Dr. Carvajal said. NUFP has really literally changed the face of the profession in terms of what leadership looks like, what involvement looks like. When I was thinking about this question, the other thing is that retention of people within the field is what MUF and NUFP has been able to do by creating a network of people, a cohort of folks that we've already in the group chats, people are like, okay, DLI 16, 17, 18, 20, when are we connecting? The faculty from those groups, NUF and MUF has been able to connect not just the fellows, but also their mentors who are often are not underrepresented from underrepresented populations. And so MUF has also introduced and sustained an ethic of care, an ethic of seeing the ethical responsibility of diversity, inclusion, and equity in higher education for a lot of professionals for whom this wouldn't be a daily commitment. I also feel as though MUF and NUF has been a way for younger professionals who sometimes feel as they have to be at the vice president's level to be involved, to be a leader. MUF and NUF has offered them avenues and pathways to start as a graduate student, to say, you know what, I'm going to give back into a program that sewed into me. And so they are serving as conference buddies. I get emails. Jasmine gets emails all the time. Hey, what can I do? I'm still a NUF student, but what can I do? I'm a grad student. What can I do? And so I believe that that responsibility of organizational, institutional, and professional involvement is something that we see strongly in students who have come a part of this program. And then the other piece is, again, there are lots of people for whom have never been MUF or NUF fellows that have such a great commitment. We could not have done this program without them. And so Dr. Borrego, like one of your former CJ Mathis is one of those students that's how I came to know about you, right? From your time in Arkansas and those many students that you impacted, and they didn't see you as, you were outside of their personal identity. But you were there and you supported them and you advocated for that campus to have such a strong culture. And because of that involvement, everywhere you've gone, I know so many students that I can say have been a part of your legacy. And I think that's what it is. It's not just about the students who are able and fortunate to be the fellows, but also the mentors, and what a great legacy that everyone is being able to leave in NASPA within the profession.
Great. I'm going to go to a question on here, but I want to make a comment about with the things that you all just said. It stands to reason that I think there will be more presidents that come through MUF, NUF. Dr. Carvajal said it. I'll say it. When you talk about student voice, one of the things that happens when you come through the field as president is you're not afraid of students. And everybody thinks that's kind of a funny thing because we have colleagues that are kind of afraid of students. Is that fair, Dr. Carvajal? And
it is. Actually, when I interviewed for this job, somebody said he's unconventional. Well, it was just because I was out willing to talk with students. But I bet those of us in student affairs, that's what we do. That's our group, and we feel at home with them. And it's, but I think it's a huge leg up. I don't think there's any question that the amount of things that come across my desk that being in student affairs prepared me for is huge. And so I think it's a great learning ground. It's why I want so many more to come up through this program and into the presidency.
Right. So here's a question that came in. A common thread among what the panelists shared today was community. What advice do you have for current students or recent grads in the program for maintaining the community after leaving the program? You want to start with that, Dr. Davis?
I can. I'll go on and give you a good plug. For those who are in the new professional age of the NUF program, this year in honor of the 30th anniversary, we are offering a pre-conference for those coming to the national conference. It's a pre-conference. It's called For NUF by NUF, and it's a professional development space for NUF new professionals, where we're going to be connecting them with mid-level professionals and senior level professionals to just kind of hear their journeys. We're going to do kind of like a case study situation, and it's a free pre-conference experience for NUF fellows, so and NUF alumni, actually NUF alumni, not current NUF fellows, but NUF alumni to be able to engage. We also have vibrant Facebook groups that we encourage NUF alums and NUF fellows to be a part of, so that way they can keep getting information, because we share information about NUF, but also about NASPA. The good thing that we have consistently found, even with Dr. Taylor today, is like there are NUF alums and MUF alums everywhere. We just have to reach out and find those folks and see what are the ways that you can get involved. And so all across NASPA, and in terms of involvement, even those that are no longer fully members of NASPA, we can definitely find those spaces, and they're still in our Facebook groups, even if they haven't come back home quite yet. So please join our Facebook groups. If you're a NUF alumni and you're coming to conference, come to that pre-conference called For NUF by NUF, and it's a free, and you can sign up.
Great, thank you. Casey, you mentioned staying connected to a cohort. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and again, I think most of my connections to the program, obviously some of them have been through formal engagement opportunities, many of which Tiffany spoke to earlier. But a lot of my connections had been very informal in nature. Some of the people that I shared what I would consider to be some fairly formative experiences, my DLI cohort, I see them regularly. Every year at the annual conference, we make it a point to reconnect with one another. We have at least one meal together. We stay in touch with each other via social media. We text one another from time to time. Whenever we're contemplating professional transitions, we're often consulting with one another, asking each other for feedback and advice. So a lot of my connection to the program has been very informal in terms of my past participants. But I think one of the great ways to stay in touch and continue to contribute to the program is through some of these more formal structured activities that Tiffany spoke to earlier.
Great, thank you. There's another question that came in. Students are learning about NUF earlier in their college experience, some as early as their freshman year. What advice or challenge would you offer to students who return to the program and want to maximize their involvement, their experience? It would be interesting to hear this from Dr. Taylor's perspective, because they found you after not being as current, and maybe Dr. Davis's or Dr. MJ's just kind of in that balance. Oh, muted.
You're muted.
Kill me. Sorry. I can't quite remember what level I was in college. I don't think I was a freshman. I think I was maybe a sophomore or junior when I was like heavily involved in extracurriculars. And I don't know. I want to type a question myself and ask, can you send me my cohort's names? Because I don't even remember who was in my cohort. So I guess to the question of how do you get in or how do you stay connected, I think that's the question, right?
Well, people are coming in earlier.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Because you have more years to participate and develop that relationship with the leadership. I think I came in a little bit older, and so while my path wasn't set, hearing what some of my younger colleagues are sharing, I don't know that I took advantage of it as much as I wish I would have now, hearing what you all's experiences were. Mine was exceptional, but I think staying connected to the group would have been helpful, starting earlier in my collegiate year and kind of building that resume, being more engaged, interning or working in different offices on my campus as an undergraduate would have been helpful. So this idea of starting or being engaged earlier, I think it's great. And I think we should continue to do that if we're not doing that already. It sounds like we are. Yes?
Great. Somebody else want to respond there?
Well, I would say if that's a common trend where students are discovering the program earlier, then I think it may require us to think more intentionally about some developmentally appropriate experiences for students in their first and second year. When I did the program, it was specifically for juniors and seniors, students that were towards the tail end of their undergraduate experience. And so if we are seeing more students that are seeking and expressing interest in the program earlier on, as early as their freshman year, then I think we need to think about how we create meaningful experiences for students to explore student affairs on their campus and beyond during those early years, during their freshman and sophomore years. So that might be a topic of discussion for the board, if in fact that is a persistent theme that we're seeing amongst students.
Great.
So this is something that we are seeing, right? So one of the things that we have been doing on the board and encouraging mentors is for students to start thinking, and we have assisted in developing a curriculum of involvement and engagement. One of the first things I would say, I'm not sure if this question came from a student or a professional, but for both folks, for both groups, I would say pace yourselves. A lot of times that's one of the things about NUFP fellows is they want to get in, they want to get everything in one semester because right after they graduate from grad school, they're about to be a university president. So they got to get it in while they're in undergrad and grad school because they're BPS essay material right 2 years post-grad. And so pace yourself. And I would say start with some of those developmentally appropriate activities that Dr. MJ just mentioned in terms of, starting them to read the literature of our field, have them to shadow some opportunities. We've also seen a lot more campuses to begin having summer internship programs for their own campuses before students do an internship through NUFP. We've also seen a lot of undergraduate students start undergraduate student organizations. So for example, future student affairs professionals at Bowling Green, they started ASAP, was aspiring student affairs professionals. You also have some institutions such as Indiana University, the University of Georgia, that have undergraduate minors in student affairs, administration and leadership. Colorado State has an online program that's like 5 weeks in the spring to introduce people to student affairs. And so these are all different levels of experience that I think students can make the most out of their time. And if someone starts as a sophomore or as a freshman, then we say, hey, here are a bunch of opportunities. How can you kind of pace them out? Because the other thing is that we tell students, we have a lot of students who major in student leadership, and we don't want them to do that. And then they come to me as a grad program faculty member, is like, what can we do with this 2.3? We can get a 3, right? And I'm like, yeah, we needed you to space that out, and focus on your academics. And so I think helping students to see that there's a pace, they don't have to do everything in 1 year, and kind of creating a curriculum can really be helpful for students who are starting earlier.
I would also add that I think the piece of, one of the things I was brought in was to address the piece around academics when I started, because we weren't talking about that. And really, if you can't write, you're not going to be able to move in the field in really productive ways if you want to keep going and keep moving. And I would say to a freshman and a sophomore, get in your writing center with whatever other classes you have. And I think, Dr. Davis, your comments about, we all know those students who are unconsciously competent, who are really good at a whole bunch of things, right? They go into the field, but that whole junior to senior year GPA or that first-time freshman GPA can't take a dive in order to be sitting in these chairs today. So that would be another piece that freshman and sophomore students might work on. As we think about 30 years of MUF and NUF, and we were all talking as colleagues today about who was involved at what point and how different things are. What advice do you have, what comments do you have about how to keep this program current?
Can I start?
You can start.
Perfect. And this actually answers the first question around what are some ways that we can develop community after you've left the program. Although the NUF message is getting to students earlier, it is still only getting to certain students. And as we think about MUF and NUF evolution, what we really still have to think about is there are a lot of people who have never heard of our program. There are a lot of, specifically in terms of institutional diversity. And we need professionals and from so many different backgrounds. So we still have not a lot of students from HBCUs, so historically Black colleges and universities, from HSIs, Hispanic serving institutions, urban serving institutions that we know has a broad equity access mission, right? Community colleges. There are still a lot of students in those spaces that we would love to have their presence in the field, and that message of NUF is still not getting to those campuses. And so for those who are alums of the program, think about what are some ways that you can introduce NUF to your campus. Like I said, this is my third, because University of Houston didn't have a NUF program, and we just started a campus-based program. We got our first NUFie. And so, but everywhere I go, I'm like, where's NUF? Like, where we at, you know? And I think that's something, and that helps to create a community even where you are, to let people know about it. And I think that's one of the ways that we really have to continue to be involved, is through increasing representation at diverse institutional types, because we also know that those institutions, especially institutional types that I mentioned, have broad equity and inclusion focus for their student population there, and their profiles are different. So.
Great. Some other thoughts about staying relevant. Dr. Taylor, unmute.
Okay. Oh, I'm unmuted. I'm unmuted. I didn't mess up this time. What I was thinking about was, if I knew the MUF fellows in my area at all the local colleges and institutions where I have wonderful relationships, given the work that I do now, I would love to bring us together to strategize how we can market, share, maybe leverage our institutional resources to bring the programs to the campuses, or to at least be a broader network for participants who are fellows who are currently in higher ed right now that I don't know about. So that's something I would love to see, because in Northeast Ohio, we have many higher ed institutions within like a 25-mile radius. So I would be interested to see, you know, who are the alum from these programs, and maybe we can do something here if that doesn't happen already. Do something here in Northeast Ohio.
Great. Dr. Carvajal, any comments here about what might be some advice about staying relevant?
Yeah, I'd say a couple things. First of all, for the program itself, I'm very curious about, because again, I think a lot of my thoughts are, I want to see more KCs. I want to see more vice presidents, and yes, I want to see more folks in the presidency. So what's the next generation of this program for alums that are now in middle management? And how would a next generation mentorship program help them to advance to higher levels? I know I've had several NUF alums, past fellows, reach out to me, and we've had those conversations. I'm assuming that's happening informally across the spectrum, but maybe that's something that NASPA can play a role in helping to structure and facilitate. I think the other thing I would say is really more broadly about the profession in general. And I think, Susan, it speaks to your piece about trying to make sure the curricular side of this is on target. And that is, the student affairs profession, period, is changing because our students have changed. Mm-hmm. Our student, and all of us who are doing this work, we know, we study the history books of what happened in the 60s and the rise of activism. And then basically we had quite a few decades of not that. Well, guess what? They're back. And, those marches on the president's office do happen again. And so how is it as a profession, and that's a good thing. I see that as a tremendous thing, that our students are exercising their voice and they're learning how to be involved and to tell folks what they think and to make a reasoned argument. But how, from a professional standpoint, do we prepare folks literally while they're still at the student level to start thinking about what it will be like to work on the other side of that conversation? I think there's real value in that.
Great. Casey, did you want to add something there?
I think you said it all.
Okay, so I've noticed that we're about 10 minutes away. I want to ask one final question, and then also ask you if there's something you wish I'd have asked that you want to say that. But just as we close, what kind of advice would you give to undergrads aspiring to join the field of student affairs? How about we start with you, Dr. MJ?
I would say, and I guess this would be different advice than what I actually did. I would say for undergrads who are considering a career in student affairs to be more intently focused on skill acquisition. You know, I think when I was thinking about the career and starting early on, I was really fixated on titles and climbing the ladder, if you will. I would encourage students to be more mindful about being intentional about the types of experiences that they're going to have access to, and focusing on becoming a student affairs generalist. You know, I think that is where our field is headed. Students or professionals that have varied skill sets that could be applied in a variety of settings. And so my advice would be to think outside the box and seek opportunities to develop a broad set of skills.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Taylor.
I'm trying to think. I'm not sure what advice I would give. I guess what I wish I would have done, but what I didn't know that I wish I would have known is that student affairs is just a piece of higher education. And so I had to pursue a doctorate to really understand that student affairs is only one. As an undergrad, student affairs is really your life, to be quite honest. You know, the world you live in, extracurricular. So not even knowing about the enterprise of higher ed was a miss for me, but I love student affairs, so I'm good. So I would just encourage those who are interested in student affairs to recognize that student affairs is still a piece of the entire higher education enterprise. And so getting experiences and learning more about that might help cultivate a direction or a pathway that includes student affairs, but provides some exposure and opportunities for finance and business and facilities and all the other aspects of higher ed that I really didn't explore at all as an undergrad and or as I pursued my master's degree.
Great, thank you. Dr. Carvajal.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. First of all, I agree with both those comments. I particularly agree with Casey's regarding the need to be a generalist. I just think that that's huge in today's higher ed landscape. But beyond that, I would ask students to think about and never forget the why. You know, when you're a student, you're going to work, you know, you're going to wake up early in the morning and you're going to stay up till God knows when in the middle of the night, and you're going to be going like crazy all day long, and it's fun. And the students who get attracted to student affairs, that's who I'm describing. They're the ones that are involved in everything, and it's fun. And then they graduate and life happens. And they move into student affairs because it was fun, and yet they don't make a ton of money, and they still work all those hours, okay? And so the ones that I see making it and continuing on are the ones who never forget what it is that we're doing and why we do it. You know, Tiffany knows I'm the guy that lived in a car when I was in high school, and this happened. This crazy story of mine that landed me in a presidency happened because somebody who worked in this profession saw something in me I didn't see in myself, and made this story happen. And that I hope for him, and I believe it's been the case, that's been a big payoff for him. That's been a payment for him beyond what he could have gotten maybe in a different profession through a different kind of paycheck. The people who buy into that idea, that those of us who do this work truly are that blessed, because we are the ones that every day get to go to work knowing that our mission that day is to go change somebody's life. They're the ones that continue on. And they're the ones that don't just make it in this profession, but they love being in this profession and can't imagine doing something else.
Great, thank you. Dr. Davis.
I have three short ones. The first extends what Dr. Taylor was talking about in terms of understanding opportunities outside of student affairs. I think it's highly important for us to understand the field and not just our jobs. And I think getting undergraduate students, especially, or even grad students, or even mid-level folks, to kind of understand that, to think beyond just what student affairs is, but also to think beyond the campus and student affairs as a campus-based enterprise, to think about we need leaders who understand and are socialize in this way in what we call higher ed adjacent fields. So working in the K-12, the access mission, working in campus enterprises, even the folks that are selling us our stuff for a residence hall. So the furniture, the technology, we need folks in all of these different fields, and that extends beyond a campus. And I think we need to help undergraduate students to start thinking about that and getting exposed to it. The same also working in diverse institutional environments. I know there's people have lots of opinions about for-profit education or proprietary education, but guess what? We need to be in those spaces as well. And they're trying to hire us, but we haven't been exposed to working at community colleges and minority serving institutions, at for-profit institutions. And so as people can become more familiar with these types of institutional environments and the ways in which we can influence and remember our why, I think that is very important for undergraduate students. The other thing is, the last two pieces is to share enough with other folks. If you're an undergraduate and you're getting this great experience and opportunity, make sure that you tell someone else. We can start now. There's room in our field for you and for someone else. It doesn't have to, because we have students that are like, oh, I didn't tell nobody because I'm trying to get in the program, Dr. Davis. And if they tell one other person, that means I can't get in the program. I'm like, there's room for us all. And I think it's a good lesson to learn at the beginning. So share enough with other people. And while you're in this program, look for folks who can be possibility models for you. You don't just need someone to be a mentor, but you've just been hearing these wonderful trajectories of us, but there's so many other folks in our field and in the program and in the profession. Look for some possibility models. With social media and everything, you can find out a lot about us and our journeys, our trajectories, well before you even meet us. But look for people to say, you know what, there's something about her or something about him or them. And, and just say, you know what, I want to learn more about what they did and how they did it. And I want to be a part of this profession. So those are my pieces of advice.
Great, thank you. I think I would add to always make whatever step it takes to be prepared. If you've got a chance to learn something new, learn it. You don't know when you're going to need it. And I think KC was with me when we heard Dr. Michael Jackson, who at the time was at USC, say, when that knock on the door comes, you want to be ready, right? And so whatever you can do to expand those, I think we've talked about the why, and if you get clear on what you're doing, on how student learning happens, and what your core set of values are, then it becomes what's the context you practice in. Because you can't take these programs from NASPA and go apply them across the board. But when you examine context, what our field teaches you is a base set of skills that you can then grow from. And I think for me, watching, both participating in MUF and NUF, meeting the students. I mean, the greatest thing for me about Facebook is seeing these students across the country who are doing really, really remarkable things. And I will agree with Dr. Carvajal, and then you're the person who benefits, I think, most from that mentoring you thought you were doing. So thank you all for being here today. We have about 3 minutes. Any last thing somebody feels like, man, I wish I'd have said this? If not, I'll say to you, I think all of us would be willing to entertain an email if you wanted to send it and they've given you our contact information. Thank you for listening today. Let's hope for the next 30 years for MUF NUF. And it sounds like Dr. Davis, now that she has all of us on her list, she's probably going to reach out, and there are things that she has invited you to do as listeners. So thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.